From Orphan to Billionaire. How one man built Rolex against all odds. Imagine being just 12 years old and losing everything. Your parents, your home, and even your inheritance. What would you do? Give up? Or fight for a future that seems impossible? This is the story of Hans Wilsdorf, the man who went from being an orphan to creating the most iconic watch brand in the world, Rolex. A journey filled with struggle, innovation, and an unshakable belief in quality. Stay with me till the end, because this story is nothing short of legendary. Early life, the orphan who dreamed big. The year was 1881. Hans Wilsdorf was born in Bavaria, Germany, but life had other plans for him. By the time he was 12, he had lost both his parents. His family's wealth? Gone. His future? Uncertain. But instead of surrendering to despair, young Hans had one thing that kept him going: a vision. He was fascinated by timepieces. While most people saw watches as mere accessories, Hans saw them as symbols of precision, craftsmanship, and luxury. But the world wasn't ready for his dream. Not yet. The journey to Switzerland. A bold step. At just 19, Hans moved to Switzerland, the heart of watchmaking. He found a job at a small watch export company where he learned the ins and outs of the industry. But Hans wasn't just working a job, he was absorbing knowledge like a sponge. He realized something groundbreaking. Pocket watches dominated the market. But what if wristwatches could be just as precise? At the time, wristwatches were seen as fragile and unreliable, but Hans had a vision that would change everything. The birth of Rolex, a name that defined luxury. In 1905, at just 24 years old, Hans Wilsdorf partnered with his brother-in-law to start his own company in London. Their goal? To create the most precise wristwatches in the world. But there was a problem. His company's name was too long and forgettable. Hans wanted a name that was short, elegant, and easy to pronounce in any language. And then, like a stroke of genius, he came up with it: Rolex. Legend has it that he wanted a name that sounded like a watch being wound, and just like that, Rolex was born. Revolutionizing the watch industry. Hans faced one major challenge. Wristwatches weren't taken seriously. People believed they could never be as accurate as pocket watches. But Hans had faith in Swiss craftsmanship. He partnered with watchmakers in Switzerland and focused on making small, precise, and durable wristwatches. Then, in 1910, Rolex became the first wristwatch in the world to receive a Swiss certificate of chronometric precision. The industry was shocked. Rolex had done the impossible. But Hans wasn't done yet. He had bigger plans. The waterproof watch, a game changer. One of the biggest problems with wristwatches? Water damage. Watches would stop working if exposed to rain, sweat, or even dust. Hans saw this as an opportunity. In 1926, Rolex introduced the Oyster, the world's first waterproof watch. But how do you prove to the world that your watch is truly waterproof? Hans had a brilliant idea. He gave the watch to a young swimmer named Mercedes Gleitze, who wore it while swimming across the English Channel. When she finished the grueling 10-hour swim, the Rolex on her wrist was still ticking perfectly. The world was stunned. Rolex wasn't just a watch, it was a symbol of durability and excellence. The self-winding movement, a new era. Hans wasn't just about making watches, he was about revolutionizing them. In 1931, Rolex introduced the perpetual movement, the world's first self-winding wristwatch. No need to wind it daily, just wearing it powered the watch. This invention changed the entire industry forever. Overcoming World War II and personal tragedy. World War II broke out, and like most businesses, Rolex faced challenges. Many markets collapsed, and materials became scarce. But Hans didn't let this stop him. During the war, he even sent Rolex watches to British prisoners of war, on credit. He told them they could pay after the war ended. Why? because he believed that these soldiers would one day be Rolex customers. Sadly, tragedy struck in 1944 when Hans lost his wife. Heartbroken, he made a decision that would define his legacy. He set up the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, ensuring that Rolex's profits would be used for charitable causes. To this day, Rolex is still owned by this foundation. The legacy lives on. Hans Wilsdorf passed away in 1960, but his dream didn't. Today, Rolex is the most prestigious watch brand in the world. From James Bond to world leaders, Rolex is more than just a watch. It's a statement, and it all started with an orphan who refused to give up. Final thoughts. So what's the lesson here? Success isn't about where you start. It's about where you're willing to go. Hans Wilsdorf didn't have wealth, connections, or even a safety net, but he had vision, persistence, and an unshakable belief in excellence. And that, my friends, is how an orphan became the king of time.